Hi, it's Lee and welcome to the Tesla Economist. That's right, Tesla's margins are about to get even bigger than we thought, and not by a small amount either, but something noticeable that will have quite a large impact on profit. Firstly, I should point out that this is only for North American sales and only for the 4680 vehicles, but it is potentially 5% more margin, as in the actual margin increases an additional 5%, which is probably closer to a 12.5% more margin than they are currently. In other words, taking margins from what might be about 40% to 45%, excluding FSD and tax credits, at least when 4680 sales and Austin Model Y are in volume production. Alright, what am I talking about? Well, I'm sure as Tesla Economist viewers you probably worked it out already, but yes, it is to do with the new part of the tax credit bill that the community has recently discovered. Surprising how it was overlooked by the community for so long, as it is such a big deal. It just goes to show there is no harm in doing your own first-hand research, as you never know what you might discover, even in the Tesla community, where everyone wants to find some amazing nugget of information and share it with everyone else for nothing more than to receive their kudos, of which I'm happy to give. So thanks to Bradford Ferguson for discovering this and Limiting Factor for bringing this to our attention. The overlooked part of the bill stipulates there is also a $35 amount for every kilowatt hour of battery cells produced, and a further $10 per kilowatt hour for the battery module, which would come to $45 per battery pack per kilowatt hour. Right, so how much are we talking here? Well, obviously it doesn't start until 2023. This will be for actual battery capacity too, not usable. And if we think Tesla has 828 cells in a battery pack, and each cell is perhaps 100 watt hours, then that adds up to 83 kilowatt hours, which is $3,735. That's for the Y with current 4680 technology. The Cybertruck might have an additional array of 69 cells in them too, taking the subsidy for those to $4,036 per vehicle. And the cells are expected to become even more energy dense over time. Now, unlike the other tax credit, this doesn't go to the consumer but the actual manufacturer, so it won't increase demand. It will just literally go into Tesla's profits, and they don't have to raise prices in order to receive this improved margin, unlike the EV credit to the consumer, of which is the only way for a manufacturer to receive more profit from, would be by raising their prices. Now, obviously, there have been various iterations of these EV incentives, and we have gone through the potential impacts of each one, and how they'll affect Tesla, the auto industry, and the EV industry. The succinct conclusion was pretty much minimally, as in there won't likely be any more EVs produced as a result of the credits. Why? Because there is no incentive to produce more batteries or cells, which is the limiting factor for EV production. In past videos, I even said that if the tax credit was to actually improve the EV industry, then they should incentivize the manufacturing and production of the cells and batteries. And wow, they have. It all comes down to cells and making enough cost effectively, which is something Tesla managed to achieve, but not legacy. Now, after Battery Day, there were estimates going around that Tesla could get the 4680 cell down to around $56 or so a kilowatt hour, which is insane. Of course, things have changed since then, but perhaps it may still be as low as $80 or less. Although, remember, Tesla's long-term contracts have not likely changed the price of the minerals they secured years ago. On top of that, the 4680 line is highly automated, or at least will be when complete. And on top of that, I think Tesla have made some massive advances and breakthroughs in the 4680 since Battery Day, and is now able to be produced faster, lower cost, and becomes more energy dense. Of course, this would mean that Legacy would receive more of this credit per vehicle than a Tesla, as they need much larger batteries in their cars, although the Cybertruck will likely have a big battery too. But prior to all the inflation, Legacy were aiming to get down to $100 a kilowatt hour for their batteries. That may now be adjusted to $120, but that would take it down to $75 a kilowatt hour now after the adjusted credit, which is actually quite competitive. With $80 kilowatt hour battery, it would mean their battery cost is around $6,000, producing perhaps close to 300 miles of range, depending on the vehicle size, and perhaps some energy density improvements along the way. And sure, some powertrain, motor, and software efficiencies. I mean, we're still talking years away until Legacy cell factories are complete, so maybe they have made some efficiency improvements. Right, Legacy won't actually start receiving these subsidies for years until their factories are even complete. Are we sure this new credit wasn't actually designed to benefit Tesla? It really was the best one for Tesla out of them all. I know a lot of the bill sounds like it's designed to benefit hybrids due to such a low minimal threshold of battery size to qualify for the EV. I mean, ridiculously low. 7 kilowatt hours, which even at $100 a kilowatt hour at the pack level would only cost, well, $700. But you add the powertrain in there and likely a plug-in version along with an electric motor and it starts to add up, perhaps about $3,000 at a rough guess, maybe more. The electric motor itself might cost around that. So, in other words, a PHEV may cost about $3,000 to $5,000 more to manufacture, and then the consumer receives $7,500 back. So, if the manufacturer raises the price by $5,000 compared to the ICE equivalent, they make just as much profit, and the consumer gets PHEV for about $2,500 less than the ICE. Of course, this doesn't include all the extra R&D equipment, production line changes, and this is just a 7 kilowatt hour battery. It won't get much range. Even the Chevrolet Volt PHEV had around 15 kilowatt hours. Therefore, I'm not entirely convinced this is going to be that much of a cash grab for hybrids, as some people think. I think the main incentive of this bill is to really give Legacy a boost in profitability with BEVs. However, the threshold is also low enough for energy storage too. The Tesla Powerwall is 13.5 kilowatt hours. Tesla still use 2170 cells for Powerwall, and they are produced in Nevada, although Panasonic would be the ones that benefit from those, but the Powerwall battery pack is assembled by Tesla in the US. As for Megapacks, Tesla are going to be using LFP for those, but they are currently using CATL's made in China cells. Well, what happens when Tesla start making their own energy storage LFP cells? And if they're in the US, then what? They'll also receive $45 from the government for each of those they produced when in a pack. Wow. Mind blown? Should be. Tesla might get their LFP cells at the cost of perhaps $50 a kilowatt hour within time, or less. Well, if that's the case, then the government would be paying for just about all of that then. Seriously, I say it again, this bill is going to reduce Tesla's cost by so much. It also means Tesla are likely to really double down or triple down on their North American production, when Tesla's costs are already that low, and they get this massive credit on top of that. Because the competition costs are so high they need that much help, it just gets crazy for Tesla. They can make batteries for nearly nothing. Oh, and then solar too. There are provisions in there for Tesla's solar business, such as a $12 a square meter of photovoltaic wafer or solar-grade polysilicon, $3 per kilogram. I can't tell you exactly what that means for Tesla without doing a lot more research, and solar is such a tiny part of Tesla's business still currently, it's not going to have any impact at this stage, but it may when they finally ramp up. This bill could even have the reverse effect of the intention. It could end up motivating Tesla to just level up that much more in the US, because it's so much more of an advantage for them. Oops. Who would have thought that something the government tried to pull ended up having the absolute opposite effect of what they aimed for? Could this be the first time ever? Tends to be the way it goes, which is why government should stay out of business. They should be the referees, not the players. Something I agree with the highly regarded neoliberal monetarist Milton Friedman. Tesla will obviously raise their prices of their vehicles to control demand and absorb perhaps $5,000 of the credit, then a further $4,000 or so from the batteries. That's almost an additional $9,000 operating profit per vehicle on top of an already very high profit. If Tesla made 5 million vehicles in North America, then that's, get this, $45 billion extra a year in operating profit. 5 million though, reaching a bit there, I'm sure people will comment. Well, what about sometime in 2025? Texas may build out to 3 million, and a new factory at 2 million, and perhaps even another. Yeah, it's possible. And even if not 2025, then 2026, or maybe 2027, depending on what level you believe Tesla is sandbagging. Especially if it means that much more profit due to so much additional demand. And this is just the extra profit from the incentives. And I'm talking about operating profit, which after tax is probably an increase of almost $40 billion in net profit. At a P ratio of 50, that is also known as an increase in market cap of, wait for it, $2 trillion. Increase, not total. And just from these incentives, what about the rest of the profit from the cars on top of that? Oh, and FSD, insurance, etc. Yes, it's very easy to find ways of Tesla's valuation reaching the moon. So remind me again why Tesla won't build another factory in North America, and perhaps another one after that. Surely Tesla want 50% market share of cars in the US, So they may end up at around 8 million or so vehicles a year. Meanwhile, that's 8 million vehicles that Ford, GM, Toyota, etc. didn't sell. Well, legacy may only be at a collective production rate of around 3 million or so by this stage. Electric, that is. Not sure what will be left of their ICE businesses, likely just niches, and prices would have risen due to lack of economies of scale. Oh, but don't forget, this is Tesla. Perhaps 4 years from now, something tells me that they may have improved quite a bit again from where they are today, offering a lot more value and at lower cost again. Of course, the main feature is FSD, yet GM's ICE cars in 4 years' time, well, perhaps they are getting a couple more miles per gallon, or now all come with plug-in hybrids. You know, in the hypothetical scenario that GM do still exist. Oops, the cronyism backfired. Not to mention, this is probably costing the taxpayer perhaps $100 billion a year at this stage, which, even after today's inflation, is still a lot of money. Surely they'll end this credit, as it's not like they budgeted for this properly or forecast Tesla's true growth. Instead, they made Tesla concentrate more on the American market and perhaps neglected Europe or China somewhat. China? No need. China's on autopilot. The Chinese are handling that. No need to ramp up cell production there. The vehicle production is much simpler. Just add more factories and send more cells from CATL and BYD. GM and Ford backed themselves in a corner by trying to level the playing field with Tesla. But Tesla will just eat up the entire field. And if those two are collectively at 3 million EVs a year later in this decade, and Tesla is at 8 million, and perhaps a couple million EVs from other manufacturers, well, the US is pretty much 100% EVs for new car sales. But who's going to win Europe? Volkswagen lost Diess, the one potential they had of lasting into the new era. Well, you have Mercedes, they have a shot. You know, all until Tesla actually do double down further in Europe. Of course, during this time, it won't be as if Tesla are doing nothing in Europe either. Remember, Tesla is also currently hiring. They're also still learning how to manufacture the 4680 cell. When they've hired more engineers and perfected the line, they can just build as many as they possibly have the labour for. More labour, faster production techniques, lines built up quicker. Yeah, this is still an exponential growth company. The other European car companies won't have the support from their ICE businesses either, meaning they'll struggle to continue to make EVs at losses for that much longer. So the low-cost EV may not be a possibility. Don't forget those greedy car dealerships and the union costs they have to deal with too. Bottom line, it just makes more sense, and trillions of dollars, to expand in the US and North America that much faster and sooner. It may mean factories take priority there first, but I think Tesla were going to expand as fast as they could anyway. They need a solid network of Tesla vehicles in the US to complete the robotaxi network too. The bill may allow Legacy to offer their EVs at a competitive price against their ICE, but that means they're just cannibalizing their profitable business, with one that is not going to be sustainable when they lose their credits. They're just buying time. Meanwhile, Tesla is benefiting the most and able to compete profitably against legacy ICE businesses. And of course, in time, it will become autonomous vehicles people want, not electric. And I'm not too sure how the government can subsidize that for them. I still don't know how legacy can survive. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.